Hello, my name is Nick Desbarats. I'm an independent instructor and author in the fields of data visualization and dashboard design, and I've taught these skills to many thousands of people in many countries all over the world. In this short video, I wanted to talk about a technique that you've probably used in your own dashboards to flag metrics that require attention, and yet it might not be as effective as you might think. And that method is showing percentage change versus previous period. Percentage change versus the previous day, previous month, previous quarter even sometimes. And so it's worth asking though, like, why do we do this? Like, why would we add these indicators to a dashboard? And it's pretty easy to see that if we have a dashboard that doesn't have any kinds of, sort of sentiment indicators like that, it's going to be challenging for users because a dashboard like this that we're looking at right now kind of makes an assumption that people have kind of detailed background knowledge about all of these numbers and they can figure out which ones are good or bad and which ones require attention. Is that a safe assumption most of the time though? In fact, virtually never. And so very often organizations will add these percentage change versus previous period indicators to draw attention to metrics that require it. And yet, what requires attention on this dashboard? Well, apparently everything. And unfortunately, this always happens with these kinds of indicators. We end up flagging everything all the time unless the current value happens to be exactly the same as the previous value, but that's almost never the case. And so there is a highly technical term for this phenomenon. I call it Christmas tree syndrome because our dashboard is lit up red and green 365 days a year. And really, this is not that useful. Flagging everything is basically the same as flagging nothing. And so right off the bat, this should kind of really disqualify this as a useful way of flagging metrics that require attention, but the problems actually don't end there, right? If we look at maybe some of these metrics that are on this dashboard and we have a closer look, like for example, employee satisfaction here, currently sitting at 5.2 on 10. I don't think anybody's gonna be really happy with that, and we all agree this is a pretty terrible number, right? And yet it's actually slightly better than it was on the previous day. Maybe it was like 5.1 on 10 or something. And so the dashboard flagged it as a positive, as a sort of a good news number, and yet clearly it's not, right? Nobody's gonna be happy with 5.2 on 10. And so this is wrong. It's kind of the wrong sentiment. It made it look positive, it's actually negative. If we look at calls answered per hour here, great, we're up 6.5% versus the previous day. That's gotta be good news, right? We're going up, we're going in the right direction, we're improving. But just for fun, let's look at the last 14 days. Okay, so that 6.5%, that's that little uptick right at the end there. But is this a metric that is improving? Is it getting better? No, it's actually getting worse. So once again, wrong sentiment. The dashboard made this look like good news, but it was actually bad news. Or unit production, down 14.7% since the previous day. That's a disaster, right? It's gotta be a crisis. Well, let's look at the last 14 days. Okay, so that 14.7% dip, that's that little kind of downturn at the end. Is that a crisis? No, it's not. It's just a very volatile metric, right? It's down 14.7% since the previous day. It'll be up 17% tomorrow and down 21% the next. And none of that really requires any attention. And yet on the dashboard, it made it look like it was a big deal, but it really wasn't. Or customer satisfaction here. All right, we're up 22% since the previous day. Crack open the champagne, time to celebrate, right? This is fantastic. Once again, just for fun, let's look at the last 14 days. Okay, so that 22% increase, that's that big jump at the end, but it really follows something terrible that happened on the day before. And so I don't think we should be celebrating here. We should probably be launching some kind of investigation to figure out what happened 2 days ago, right? But yet the dashboard was saying that this was fantastic news. But all we did is we really just kind of returned to baseline, so it's not good news. Or website availability, 99.1% currently, down less than 1% since the previous day. Looks like nothing, right? Anything that changes less than 1% requires no attention, right? Well, again, let's look at the last 14 days. So this is a metric which is normally at 99.9 or 100%. And so 99.1% is actually very unusual. And when you think about it, this is website availability. And if we're like an e-commerce company or something, this means that 1 out of every 100 page requests to our website is failing, which could be the worst problem on the entire dashboard. That's an all hands on deck crisis, basically. And yet the dashboard made it look like nothing, right? Change of 0.9%. And so a dashboard like this is gonna take a lot of time. for users to go through. It might take them 20, 30, 40 minutes to go through these numbers and actually figure out which ones of these actually require attention or not. What dashboard designers will sometimes do is they'll say, okay, let's just only show the large changes. We'll hide anything that's less than, say, 2% difference. And this looks like progress, right? At least we're not highlighting everything anymore. But if we go back to our wrong slide here, well, remember website availability down at the bottom? This changed less than 2%. In fact, it changed less than 1%. And so if we hide changes that are, say, less than 2%, we're gonna hide that on the dashboard, and yet it was the most important problem on the whole thing. And so we can't do that. We can't actually hide the small problems. We have to show everything all the time. And so on July 13th here, as it turns out, after that long review, we determined that actually everything was fine. Like none of these numbers actually required attention, which is actually fairly typical. On most days, most metrics don't require attention. What happens on the next day? So now we're July 14th. Well, we have to start the process all over again. Now we have a whole different set of red and green numbers. And so again, 20, 30, 40 minutes of review, but this time, after that very kind of manual, laborious review, we determined that there are multiple crises happening simultaneously. In fact, this is the worst day we've ever had, and yet it didn't look that different than the completely normal day the day before. And that's a problem, right? If the dashboard doesn't look different on the worst day we've ever had compared to a completely normal day, well, we should probably look at maybe a different method. Worth asking the question though, why? Why is this such a popular method, right? We see it on dashboards all the time. Well, I think there are a couple of reasons. The first is that it's just easy, right? It's a very simple calculation. There's no rocket science here. It's very easy to add these numbers to a dashboard. It also kind of gives the illusion of usefulness. Like people like to see red and green on dashboards, and it puts red and green on the dashboard. And it's also not controversial, right? We don't have to argue about what numbers should we consider to be good or bad. If it's 7% lower than the previous day, then nobody can argue with that. But as I hope I've just shown, it's also useless. It's not really actually telling users anything. In fact, I'm not exaggerating when I say you might as well literally put random numbers on your dashboard. There are methods where we can only highlight metrics that genuinely actually require attention. And I talk about these in my Practical Dashboards course. If you want more information about that, my website is listed at the bottom there, practicalreporting.com. And if you have any comments, questions, if you disagree with anything that I've said in this video, I would love to see that in the comment section below. Thanks very much for watching.